Back then, the Earth was believed to be the center of the universe. Asking too many questions could put you at odds with the Church, and thinking differently was considered a sin. But in the midst of the darkness of ignorance, a light emerged. A man who dared to look up at the sky and question everything. Amid the vibrant rise of scientific awakening in Europe, a baby boy was born in the city of Pisa, Italy, on February 15, 1564. He was named Galileo Galilei, who would later be remembered as one of the greatest scientists in human history. Galileo was born into a middle-class family. His father, Vincenzo Galilei, was a musician and music theorist with a deep interest in science. His father's influence was instrumental in shaping Galileo's critical thinking from a young age. Vincenzo taught Galileo to question authority and seek truth through observation and experimentation, rather than simply accepting inherited teachings. Young Galileo showed exceptional talent in many areas, particularly in mathematics and philosophy. However, in line with his family's wishes, he was initially encouraged to study medicine. At the age of 17, Galileo enrolled at the University of Pisa to study medicine. However, his fascination with mathematics and the natural sciences was too strong. He eventually abandoned his medical studies and shifted his focus to mathematics and physics. After leaving the University of Pisa without a degree, Galileo began teaching mathematics. In 1589, he was appointed professor of mathematics at the University of Pisa. There, he began conducting various experiments to prove the laws of motion. One of his most famous experiments involved dropping two objects of different masses from the Leaning Tower of Pisa to demonstrate that the speed of a falling object does not depend on its weight, contrary to the long-accepted views of Aristotle. A few years later, Galileo moved to the University of Padua, where he taught mathematics, mechanics, and astronomy. It was here that his most productive scientific period began. He developed various scientific instruments, including the geometric compass, a primitive thermometer, and most famously, the telescope. In the early 1600s, Galileo heard about the invention of the telescope in the Netherlands. He quickly built his own version, which was much more powerful than previous designs. With this tool, he began a series of astronomical observations that shook the foundations of both scientific and religious thought of the time. Galileo discovered the four largest moons of Jupiter, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, now known as the Galilean satellites. This proved that not all celestial bodies revolve around the Earth. The moon's surface was mountainous and cratered, not smooth and perfect as previously believed. Countless stars invisible to the naked eye, revealing that the universe was far more vast than imagined. The phases of Venus, which could only be explained if Venus orbited the Sun. These discoveries strongly supported the heliocentric model proposed by Nicolaus Copernicus, which asserted that the Sun is the center of the solar system, not the Earth. Galileo's support for heliocentrism brought him into conflict with the Catholic Church. At the time, the Church upheld the geocentric model, with Earth at the center of the universe, as being consistent with Scripture. In 1616, the Church declared the heliocentric theory heretical and forbade Galileo from teaching it as truth. However, Galileo did not give up. He continued to write and conduct research. In 1632, he published a book titled Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems, which compared the geocentric and heliocentric systems. Although he wrote it in a neutral tone, many interpreted the book as subtly favoring heliocentrism. As a result, in 1633, Galileo was summoned to Rome and tried by the Roman Catholic Inquisition. Under the threat of torture, Galileo was forced to recant his support of Copernican theory and accept the geocentric model. Legend has it that after making his recantation, he whispered, "Eppur si muove," and yet, it moves, showing that he still believed in the scientific truth despite external pressure. Galileo was sentenced to house arrest for life, which he served at his private villa in Arcetri, near Florence. Although his eyesight gradually worsened until he became blind, his scientific spirit never waned. He continued to write and conduct research with the help of his loyal students. In 1638, he published another major work, Two New Sciences, which laid the foundation for modern mechanics and physics. The book was published in the Netherlands, beyond the reach of the Church's censorship. On January 8, 1642, Galileo passed away at the age of 77. He left behind a tremendous legacy in the fields of astronomy, physics, and scientific methodology. He is remembered as the man who led humanity out of the darkness of dogma and into the light of observation and reason. Hundreds of years later, the Catholic Church acknowledged its mistake in condemning Galileo. In 1992, Pope John Paul II formally expressed regret for the Church's treatment of Galileo. The life story of Galileo Galilei is a reflection of the courage of a scientist in pursuit of truth, even in the face of powerful institutions and deeply entrenched beliefs. With his telescope and critical thinking, he opened humanity's eyes to the vastness of the universe and laid the groundwork for modern science. Through his spirit, we learn that scientific truth cannot be restrained by authority, it will always find a way to shine through.